Well, I'm going to jump in early today, a minute early. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Voice Essentials Live Hangout. I have to admit, I nearly did the vocal analysis intro. Good to see you, and a very special Happy Mother's Day. Here in Australia, our Mother's Day was yesterday, and I had a lovely day with my wife and my children. I hope wherever you are, you had a lovely Mother's Day. I believe it was Mother's Day in the US. Don't know about Canada. Confirm or deny in the chat. One of the reasons I jumped into the chat so early is because there's so much love being shared around in the live chat as we start today. So it's nice to see you all of our usuals. And some a new name. Darkus, have you been with us before? I can't recall. There's so many people that sort of come in and out of the live chat. Regardless, Kelly's saying yes in Canada for Mother's Day, and yes, Rebecca's saying Dean and Rebecca are saying yes for Mother's Day in the US. So. There you go. Well, happy Mother's Day, everyone. It's also, did you know this? And I found this one out myself, Linda. It is International Nurses Day today. That's important to me, not simply because we all need great nurses, but my eldest is a nurse and a registered nurse here in Australia. So happy International Nurses Day to everyone. Today we are doing a webinar style show. We're going to be looking at microphones. Such an important piece of kit for us as contemporary singers. There are very, very, very few occasions where we as contemporary singers are not using microphones. And so given its ubiquitous nature in what we do, I think it's pretty important that we have a look at it and unpack it a little bit. And well, not a bit. I've got props today, everyone. I've got props, and just so you know that what happens with these webinars is they do stay live as a part of the live space, but afterwards, I edit them down, tidy them up, and make them a member-only exclusive piece of content. Currently, there's over 20 webinars that are member-only. So if you are not currently a member, you might like to consider becoming a member of the channel for a very small, probably less than the price of a coffee once a month. And that'll then give you access to these member-only exclusive webinar, really dense content. So I hope you might consider taking part of that. We've got plenty of our members. You can tell the members because they've got coloured names and special little icons next to their names. So Dean, Kelly, Linda, these are all people who are. I just saw Karen from Singwise. Hi, Karen. Nice to see you. Let's get into today's. There was one other thing I was going to tell you about. Yes, there is. Before we start the webinar, I do want to just let you know I'm starting to experiment and implement direct vocal analysis within our vocal analysis videos. You know how we do the reaction videos once a week? Well, last week, and I think the week before, I think I've done 6 now, where I've started to actually do, in its very rudimentary form, it's pitch analysis, where we show pitch on screen and we talk about pitch, but also it shows us their vibrato. And now you're not going to have access to those styles because I've only just started them. They won't come live until September, mid-September, I think, is the first one. But it's an exciting next sort of development, implementation of deep dive analysis into our vocal analysis videos. And it's a bit clunky. I must admit, my first few uses of it and trying to integrate it into the reaction videos has been a bit clunky, but I will get there. I will get better as we go along. But I'm really hoping that provides just another layer to our investigation of the fabulous voices that we explore here on the channel as a part of the analysis videos. And so, yeah, I wanted to let you know. Oh, and also, we're doing a poll at the moment, everyone. It's related to our discussion that we're about to start around microphones. Suddenly, 13 of you have already voted. What's your biggest mic moment struggle? Now, I can only ever provide, YouTube only gives me options to put 4 options in there, right? I know there are more challenges that mics can create than the 4 we've listed, but you've got to choose from those 4. And can I tell you, I am really surprised by the very standout leading answer at the moment. I am surprised. I thought it would be one, not the other. We'll close the poll after we finish the webinar, and you know, we can come back to that. We'll also come back to doing some Q&A if we have time once we've done the analysis. But for now, the webinar. So, hang on, dear me, I'm really, I've got to press all the right buttons, you know I do. So today we're going to talk about microphone mastery for both live and studio. As I said at the beginning of the video, there is no other more important tool for a singer besides the instrument itself. I'm talking about the next thing that you can purchase as a singer. And not enough singers, in fact, I had toyed with the idea of asking the question, who owns their own mic, in the poll, but then I thought, I wondered whether I'd asked that question before, so I decided not to. But it is an important thing to own your own mic, particularly if you're wanting to really, really push into the development of your voice. So let's get into talking through some things here. And firstly, I want to talk about mic technique and why it matters. We'll talk about, you know, the technical side of mics in a moment. But before we do, I thought it was important that we talk about mic technique. And so often when I first start working with students here in the studio, you know, one of the first things we do in the first lesson when I I quite to their surprise hand them a live microphone. More often than not, it's this microphone here. I'll hand them the mic, and it's almost like I've handed them a cobra, you know, like it's going to bite them or something. But we have to become very comfortable with holding microphones. A microphone, a lot of people think, when they think of microphones, they only think of it as something that makes your voice louder. Now, can it and does it do that? Yes, of course it does. But a mic is so much more than that. And in the volume sphere of a microphone's job is the challenge that it does expose your voice. And it is, in part, exposing your voice through that lift in volume. Not only does it amplify your strengths, it also amplifies your weaknesses. And from the point of view of learning voice, one could argue there's not many more powerful tools than being able to hear your vocal weaknesses really stand out, because when you can hear your weaknesses, you are able to identify them, and then you're able to look to change them, to develop them, to enhance and refine them. Great singers use the mic to shape tone and dynamics. So this is where we move beyond just the amplification thing, right? Just the volume thing. We start to think about it also has the ability to develop your tone and your dynamics, your loud and soft volume of voice. Now, it can do it at the point of the microphone, in actually using it, but it also can do it as the first part of what's called the signal chain as it goes down into the mixer, whether it be digital or analog, and the EQ can be tweaked, compression can be added, which often adds color, and other things can be added as well, saturation. There's a whole range of aspects that can happen to that signal chain, both in the studio and in the live setting. And so these are where the microphone really becomes this vocal shaping tool. Poor mic use can lead to muddiness, feedback, and reduced impact. Now, example, if I get up and I'm not going to be able to give you an example of feedback, fortunately for all of us. That's that bit where you go, your ears nearly get. I was in a stadium gig once. I was in a support act in a stadium gig where they were setting up what are called a big line array speakers. I don't know who did what wrong, but honestly, the feedback was so loud, it felt like it was going to rip my head off. It hurt. It wasn't just annoying or uncomfortable, it actually physically hurt. That could give me some insight into perhaps some of my hearing loss. Muddiness will come from this, you get down there. I don't know what that sounds like, to be honest with you. But the mic muddiness usually comes from proximity and being up too close, and we're not allowing the full resonance to develop before it hits the capsule of the microphone, and also depending on how you're using the mic can affect the if you're singing sometimes I have singers come in who have had a lot of experience with things like Toastmasters and whatever, or church singers are a big one for this. They'll put their mic on their chin, and so the voice is singing out across the mic, but actually the mic needs to be about there. We don't want to be right on the capsule, but the capsule is moving this way, right? The diaphragm of the mic. And so when we sing across it, it's going to change the way the microphone behaves. I do want to just very quickly at this point out that I am not a university qualified, experientially qualified for that matter, sound engineer. And so I am going to be being very simplistic for our application of this information today, and I won't be offended in any way, shape, or form if someone puts something in the chat to correct something that I say. I think we'll be safe. I'm not going to get too technical, but I do want to put that quick disclaimer in. All of my knowledge about microphones comes from having just used them for the last 40 years. Knowing how to work the mic enhances emotional delivery. So, for example, we're talking about, how you hold the mic. And remember, the holding of the mic is as much, well, I'll rephrase. I went to say it's as much as a visual thing as an audio thing. No, it's mostly an audio thing, but there is the visual aspect as well. And you do need to be able to think about what are you conveying in the holding of the mic. if you hold your mic way down here, or you're cupping the mic, and you're doing certain things, look amateurish, and they'll sound amateurish as well. And so it's something to be mindful of in knowing how to work the mic and the dynamic movement. And it's also, and this is a small point to be mindful of, and that is that stage and studio demands different technical considerations, and we'll get into a little bit of that today. There is a big difference between mics to mics to mics. A mic is not a mic is not a mic, is what I'm in the habit of saying. And it's really important you kind of pick up the right tool for the right job. For Mother's Day, I bought my wife some framed photos of her and her siblings, and I had to screw the things in on the back so that the pictures could hang on them, and I had to select a Phillips head screwdriver. Now, funnily enough, had I chosen a flat top, like flat head screwdriver, a small enough one, I probably could have, got that screw in. But actually the best tool for the job was the Phillips head. They're both screwdrivers, but they're actually designed to do slightly different jobs. And that's the same with microphones. And so let's talk about some things here. And these are going to be driven here. The core techniques of your mic control are going to be driven by different, the choice of mic that you use. So, for example, proximity control is the distance to manage warmth and clarity. So on this microphone I'm using here, which is a Shure SM7B, it's designed, it's quite a large, it's a dynamic microphone. We'll talk a bit more about that in a second. It's a large diaphragm mic, and so it's designed to really enhance spoken voice. And that's why you'll see it often being used on podcasts and YouTube channels where there's a lot of spoken activity. Interestingly, and I think I'm remembering this correctly, Michael Jackson used an SM7B in the recording of the Thriller album, I think. There was one album where I do know he used the SM7B, which is interesting. And we actually see, for those of you who've watched the reaction videos, now that I go to say her name, Gigi Vibes, on her when she's recording her their Tuesday live, Tuesday, and they do it multiple nights a week. She uses for singing vocal, she'll use an SM7B, and I too use a different. This is my SM7DB. This is the newer version of the SM7B, and I use this microphone, the dynamic microphone. I use that particularly when I'm doing bigger, like power ballad type vocal, because it's not going to, it just responds to my amplitude a bit better than when I'm using a condenser mic, which I might show you a little bit later. And anyway, this is all about, how does the mic behave? And part of that is proximity control. Feedback prevention. Really important, more so in a live setting. And so, for example, if I come over to, let me just come back to this, so these two mics here are actually the same now that I come to it. Let me go to this mic. Now, typically we wouldn't use this mic and this mic in a live setting. We wouldn't typically use it. This mic we would. This is a Shure Beta 58. This is what's called a supercardioid mic. and this is a cardioid mic. This is referring to the polar pattern. And I'll come back over here. I'll hold these two. This is also a supercardioid, so they're the same polar pattern. But the cardioid, so for example, if we had just the straight SM58 mic, and that would be, and I actually own one of those, but I don't have it right here. The straight SM58 has no blue ring. It's just, that's almost visually one of the standout differences. And so when I'm on stage with this microphone, the SM Beta 58, sorry, it's not called I think it's not called SM, I think it's just called Beta 58A. I have to have my fold back wedge angled if I don't want to have it right in front of me, because the polar pattern has a little bit of responsiveness just here. Whereas, so the angle of feedback is actually on a 45-degree angle. So it's good with this mic to have the mic there or there. If I was using just the straight SM58, the best place for my foldback wedge is to be right in front of me. And so these are important things to know about polar patterns, because you can save yourself a lot of issues. One of our questions in the poll today is about feedback. You can save yourself a lot of issues with gain before feedback, particularly for your sound man, when you know how to angle the mic. The other thing you need to know about feedback for microphones is if you point the mic directly at the speaker system, you are heightening the risk of feedback significantly. That being said, there is some pretty wonderful technology built into speaker systems and sound desks to basically mitigate and reduce feedback like significantly now. But still, you know, let's not tempt the technology. Keep your mic up and away from the foldback position. And then Studio Tools Mastery. The other thing we want to think about, and so for example, I grabbed a pop filter here. So a pop filter is literally designed to stop the p and b sounds. And so if I've got that explosive lot of air hitting the diaphragm of the mic, you're going to get the p, b, and that real b, and it's disruptive, especially in recorded vocals. And so we use pop filters. This one is it's not too bad. It sits on the front of my NT1, my Rode NT1 microphone. And it, as I said, reduces, and it literally does it by reducing the way your air disrupts and filters. Pop filter filters the air and balances that airflow out as it goes through. Knowing, having quality preamps, because when the audio signal hits the microphone, the signal as it travels down, the audio signal travels down to your mixer or whatever it's going into, it needs to be amplified before it then goes on to the amplifier and the speaker system. And these are called preamps. And there is a really wide array of quality and expense when it comes to preamps. And you'll often hear people referring to, such and such piece of equipment has a really high quality preamp, and that either will be a clean preamp or it will be quite a coloured preamp, and you hear people talk about these sorts of things. And then obviously we're going into things like compression, and that these all change what the microphone is then able to sound like. But first and foremost, it's about getting a really good quality start to your signal. And that's why a quality microphone is so important. So let's talk about the advanced mic techniques. We kind of got into this, didn't we? This dynamic. So there is a difference between. Remember, I said before that this. Oh, I didn't come. Did you grab all of that? I wonder if I can go back. Did I have that up? I don't think I did. There you go. For those of you playing at home, apologies, I hadn't come back to showing you some of those some of those slides. So let's now go forward to these two microphones. And I do want to just come back over here. I need to remember to come back to the slide. So these two microphones, I said before, they're both supercardioid. The polar pattern is the same, but the manner in which the diaphragm, the capsule, is doing its work is different. So this microphone is called a dynamic microphone. So that means that the capsule is not electrically charged, whereas this is a condenser microphone and this one is. The other difference is that this is a wireless microphone and this is a corded microphone, which I pulled the cord out from. It's not currently plugged in. The difference between these two, and these are both predominantly used, again, this is a bit, you know, Phillips head, flat top head, screwdrivers, predominantly used for live performance. Can they be used for recording? Of course they can. Are you going to get as good a result out of these for recording as opposed to a microphone that's designed specifically for recording? Probably not. So this one, and this is the one that I always encourage singers to go to and explore buying first. It's, as I said, a supercardioid, so it's a bit more responsive, got a little bit more frequency room than your straight, flat, industry standard SM58. It does cost a little bit more as well, but it's still pretty good because it's a dynamic microphone. It's not going to be too responsive in a live setting and cause you some issues with feedback. This, on the other hand, is a condenser live microphone, supercardioid condenser. This particular mic, this is my first ever wireless mic. I own a Beta 87A as well, which is my what I sing on all the time, but this is here in the studio. This is nearly 30 years old. And just on that point, if you buy good quality microphones, they should last you forever. Maybe it depends on how rough you are with them, but if you buy good quality gear, it will last you for a long, long time. So this 30-year-old mic, 30? No, 25-year-old mic, is a Sennheiser, and it is beautiful and live and crisp, and it picks up far more frequency intricacy than what this one does. Now, you can engineer, if you've got a good sound engineer, they are going to be able to do a lot with this to bring it up to this, if that makes sense. But interestingly, I can tell the difference between this one, and my 87A, which I much prefer over this one when I'm singing live. The reason I use condenser mics when I sing live is because the settings in which I sing are safe enough that I can get away with singing with an overly live condenser microphone. But if I was singing regularly in pubs and clubs, I would probably find myself leaning back to using a dynamic microphone purely because of that challenge of feedback and issues that a condenser mic can create in an overly live, loud setting like pubs and clubs. let me come back to our, I need to come back to our thing. And so you see here I've written down that the condenser is studio focused. It is because of that live thing, but as I just said, I use a condenser microphone in a live setting all the time. We talked about polar patterns, and a cardioid is best for most live uses. But that being said, that comes down to how there are a lot of exceptions to all these rules. It comes down to where you've set up your fallback. It also comes down to the skill of your engineer. If you're on big gigs, it comes down to the skill of your fallback, your monitor engineer. There's a whole heap of caveats that need to be put in here. Use monitoring intelligently. So we talked about the positioning of the wedges being our floor monitors. In-ears, you can in-ears in-ears is a completely different other discussion, and the impact of your mic depending on the type of microphone. Depending on the type of microphone you're going to use, as to whether you are using floor monitors or in-ear monitors, there is a difference, but it's probably getting a bit... In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have put that one in because it's a little bit too detailed. Try to practice with the monitoring system you'll perform with. This is important. If you can, and this is a big if, and it's a big if because of cost. If you can, try to get used to working with the monitoring system you're going to sing with in practice, as you will in performance. So if you are normally singing with in-ear monitoring, try to practice with in-ear monitoring. If you are going to practice with perform with floor monitors, practice with floor monitors, and get used to how your voice and your mic behave with either or, and that's important. Match your technique to the context. So if you are in a live environment, think about your live, your mic use. Often when I'm working with singers and we first start out, the mic movement is often there to there, like it's, like they're as if they're in a stadium. Now, if you were in a stadium, that level of movement, and we see it, don't we, with big stadium performances, that will work. But in most of the contexts you and I are performing in, the movement is far less, but actually will give you quite a bit of change in dynamic. And so learning how much to move your mic is really important. In studio, learning, it is really important when you're working with a microphone in studio, typically a condenser. They are super live, super responsive, very sensitive. And so even if the singer finds themselves tapping their foot, that even can be picked up through the floor, up through the mic stand, and you might have yourself an annoyed engineer because you might have just done the best vocal take of your life, but we've got this tap, 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 tap all the way through it. And that's something to be mindful of in your use of microphones in a studio. And when we, probably more so in the zone, when we're thinking about studio microphones, it could be said, even a greater variety of studio mics, and they all have. You'll often hear engineers talking about them as all of them have different colors and different tonal signatures, and they're often going to try and match the microphone to the singer, and a really good engineer isn't going to be beholden to a brand of mic. They're going to be thinking about what mic is going to capture the best vocal signal for that singer. Here's some common pitfalls to avoid. Please avoid eating the mic. Don't sit right up on the mic. That is, it's going to, more often than not, it's going to lead to muddiness. You're not allowing your voice, the acoustic value of your voice, to develop enough to, and I'm talking singing here. It gets a little bit different when we get into things like rap and other vocal values. Distorted vocal, for example, is going to use the mic slightly different. So notice that with everything I'm saying, there are little thoughts that you have to take into play in your notion of use, and that's why it's so important for you to work and practice with the mic, because you've got to really get a handle on how are you going to use the mic and what's going to work best. Cupping the grill, now you'll see that with people who are doing rap and those sorts of things. That is going to really make it and dampen the sound off. So I'm always encouraging singers to bring their hand back down onto the stem of the mic. Leave the grill free. Don't find yourself getting up and over, and it might look cool for a rock singer, but you're going to lose a lot of color in what the microphone can, pick up. And so that's something to be mindful of. Again, be careful. Don't take your mic and point it at the fold back. It's easy to do. If you're just standing there, let me come back over. If you're just standing there and you just suddenly drop the mic down to down beside you, suddenly the mic is literally facing the monitor, the wedge, and you're going to almost certainly, get some feedback from that. So be mindful of that, and don't forget to think about your mic angle. We talked right back at the beginning about how are you holding the mic. I never like to hold. I don't encourage students to hold the mic straight on, because when we do that, I'm trying to stay in frame here. Let me bring it over across. When we are doing that, we're creating more opportunity. Now I'm talking more live, because when you're performing live, you're not using a pop filter. When you're performing live, you don't want to be singing straight into it, because you're going to increase the likelihood of plosives, B's and P's and those sorts of things. But equally, you don't want to be there either, because now you're singing across the diaphragm. So I always say, think about being parallel to the ground and then just tip it. And then I always think of the mic as being sort of sitting, the level of the mic sitting between my bottom lip and my chin. And so I'm kind of singing, my air is passing across the top of my mic. I'm reducing plosives, but I'm giving the mic the best opportunity to capture the fullness of my voice. These are all things, if I can bring it back, these are all things that I think are good for you to remember in the use of your voice. Yes, as I've been saying throughout, there are exceptions to every single rule in this space. There are. But the rules generally apply, and particularly for those of us who are beginners, I think you're going to find a lot of these rules really helpful if you can, apply them to your own voice. And mics are your best friend. You want to befriend them. And I am a great believer in a singer owning their own mic. And I've only shown you, how many I've shown you 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm also wearing a lapel, which is a omnidirectional polar pattern. I'm wearing it today just in case I was going to get up and walk around to show you other things, but I haven't done that. I own a lot of microphones. You only need to own one to start with. Just start with one. And we didn't even get into things like hygiene. You know, owning your own mic is a hygiene issue. You know, when we sing, we're spitting into microphones all the time. Not intentionally, it's just a part of the process. With that comes germs, viruses, and so making sure that you know, you're not just walking in and this is a big thing for church singers. If you're a church singer, every time you walk in on a Sunday to pick up that mic that the church owns, you probably don't know who used that mic the last time. It's gross to think about, but it is worth thinking about, because that can be the difference between you having the next couple of days in bed because you got sick or not. I hope you've enjoyed that little travel through. And I'm going to come back over here to our questions. Erwin has gone to bed. I'm sorry, Erwin, we didn't get to your question. Let me see if I can... we should actually, before we go on to questions, let's come over to the live... well, we've had 17 votes today, and there's still a clear winner. Actually, let me answer a question, and then I'll come back. If you haven't already voted, put your vote in. But I'm on one level, I am surprised by the poll response. Let me just come over here and get this question. This is the question from... I've got to find it first. A question from Erwin. And Erwin has asked, if I can get that into the right spot, Erwin has asked this question, and he's gone to bed. He's gone to bed, but he can come back and get it later. Hi, Dan. How can I blend or mix falsetto head voice with flageolet, or turn those registers into flageolet? I'm trying to sing high notes like E5 onwards without yelling. Thank you. Erwin, I think you asked, am I mistaken, or did we answer this question? Yeah, we did. We answered this question in the last Q&A after we did the last live review. And so, Erwin, I'm going to direct you back to that question because that is where the answer is. We did answer it. And so I'm going to come on to Darkus, who asks a mic question. Darkus is asking, what kind of mic do I use to sing when I'm playing the piano? It's not going to really depend on whether you're playing piano or not. It's going to depend on the context of where you're playing and what for. So, for example, if you were playing to record for YouTube, where it's just you and your piano, then something like an SM7 DB will go quite nicely, in part because it's a dynamic microphone. And so if you have it facing you like so, then you're not going to pick up a lot of you're going to reduce the amount of piano that the mic is going to pick up, because it's a cardioid polar pattern, and so the absent space is directly behind the mic. Equally, if you were in a more of a like a piano bar setting, you might be given to using a supercardioid condenser microphone because you want to have that lovely clarity of resonance, and you don't necessarily want to create a tremendous amount of separation between what's happening with the mic and the piano. You're not unhappy to have a little bit of bleed through into the vocal mic with the piano because it will give a little bit of volume to the piano, just a little bit of lift, but it will predominantly, lift your mic, lift your voice. I tell you what would be interesting, and I'm thinking of someone like, it would be interesting to go and have a look at what sort of mic is Elton John using. What sort of mic is Billy Joel using? I'm thinking of piano playing singers. What type of mic is, and I would think of Elton John as being sort of pop, whereas Billy Joel I think more as being sort of rock, pop rock. But then you could go and have a look at who would be like a Diana Krall from memory, or Alicia Keys, who is R&B pop. Go and have a look at the type of mic she uses, and just have a look at the context. The challenge when you're buying your first mic is you do want to buy a mic that is kind of a one size fits all kind of. And as we've talked about today, there actually isn't really a one size fits all, but this is why I generally direct my singers, my students, to this mic or something of similar nature, a supercardioid dynamic, because it's going to give you a little bit of frequency response, and it's going to be pretty capable within a live setting. And if you wanted to, again, it's not going to do the best job on the planet, but you could record into this if you wanted to, and it's a good place to start. And once you start there, then if you really get into it, like I am, you can start really branching out into very specific mics for very specific jobs. And I've got one more question. Oh, we do need to finish up with this. Let's come back to Mr. Fomiati. I want to just grab your question. Mr. Fomiati has asked a good question, actually. Just get rid of that one there. We'll come up to Mr. Fomiati. Oh, no, that's not what I want. Why did that do that? Here we go. Mr. Fomiati's asked, and I'm going to answer this quickly, Dom. I've noticed people singing quite quietly into the mic and using it to create their tone. Is this best practice? It can be, yeah. Absolutely, and that's what we're talking about earlier with the slides. Is it's not just about volume. You absolutely can use it as a tone shaping device, and we didn't even get into things like looping and all that sort of other very creative use of microphones. And so, using it for to really enhance aspirated tone, ambient tone, 100% is it something that you can and should consider using your mic for? Absolutely. Absolutely. I hope you have got something out of today's live discussion. I've just saw Laura Singh's Laura's saying Billie Eilish does that. Yeah, she does. She's actually a great example, Laura, for using microphones to really enhance ambient vocal. And yeah, I'm glad you threw that into the chat. I hope you've enjoyed the live chat today. It's been all the questions, the poll very quickly. Yeah, it hasn't changed much. We got up to 19 votes. Ending the poll, and as you can see, here's the results. Oh, come on, there it is. What's your biggest mic moment struggle? Forgetting to control distance. Interesting. I've got to tell you, I thought a lot more of you would go to the feedback issue, but that would suggest to me that a lot of you have have learnt that lesson. We've all learnt that lesson the hard way, and so yeah, learning to control the distance of your mic, really important. We talked about P's and B's and the angle of your microphone, and holding it like a drumstick. We've got to be careful of all of those things. Whoa! I hope you've enjoyed today's live hangout today, everyone. Next week we have a special guest coming in, and a friend of mine. She's currently the Queensland ANATS chapter president. She's a vocologist, and Emma Wilson is her name. We're going to be having her on the show. We're going to be talking about vocal health, and through the lens of a vocologist, if you please. So that'll be good. I hope for many of you that your Mother's Day comes to a happy end, and I very much look forward to seeing you next week, where, as always, you will hear me say, I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.